If you are thinking about buying or selling in 2023 or doing both, or you own a home and you're just curious what's happening in the market and how that's going to impact you and your equity investment, this video is for you because we're going to dive into the Atlanta housing market as of March 2023. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Connie Carlson. I am a local real estate agent here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been selling real estate for almost 20 years. I can't believe it. And before that, I was a real estate appraiser. I love delving into the numbers, looking at what's happening to the housing market. And why do I like to do that? Because I want to be able to give my buyers and sellers good advice about what they should be doing, whether they're thinking of buying or selling. So if that's something that you would find helpful, we create these videos on a consistent basis. Make sure you subscribe, like, or follow our YouTube channel. It would mean the world to us. All right, so what I want to do today is I really want to first start by looking at what's driving the housing market, because there's been a lot of analysts and predictions as to what's going to happen, and a lot of people are being proven wrong right now, and it's kind of got everybody turned upside down as to figuring out what to do with the housing market and if they should make a move now or wait till later. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will have a better idea as to whether or not it works well for you to do that. So without further ado, let's talk about what is driving the market. This morning, I saw this article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Georgia economy is humming despite Fed. And what it's all about is how strong the housing market is right now in Georgia, in Atlanta. In fact, we are one of, I think they said, the 15th tightest housing market in the entire nation. So we're kind of leading the nation as far as job growth and unemployment rate. It said that they interviewed these hiring managers, and 50% of the managers said that they had open positions and they were not getting near enough applicants. So what does that mean? It means that people are moving to Atlanta, companies are moving to Atlanta, and when job growth happens, our economy gets stronger. And the Fed is trying to tamp down some of the inflation that is a result of this whole national strong economy. But when they did increase those rates, which were in June, July of last year, rates started to go up. And the plan was if we increase the cost to borrow money, it'll tamp down some of this inflation and it'll tamp down buyer demand. And it did do that. So let's take a look at that in a few minutes. I'm going to show you how housing demand, the number of house buyers out there buying, went down last year, but what's happening to it this year? Are these buyers coming back? Are we going to see increasing prices again? That's the question. So make sure you stay for the end because we're going to share with you what we think is going to happen and what's currently happening. All right, so we have our job. The next thing I want to look at is interest rates. My favorite place to go to look at interest rates where they currently are, as well as where they've been in the past, is FreddieMac.com. And I love their interactive chart here because you can see going back, oh my, you can go back all the way. Well, you can change the 10-year. You could go back and see rates for 10 years, even more. And look at this dip. We've been living in these low interest rates for 10 years up until last year. And then we started to see, let's look at the dates down below. June 30th, we had this big jump and then it kind of went down. And then at the height, we were almost at 7%, sometimes 7%, depending on your credit. And that was in October. And then it kind of dropped again. And now we're back up again to 6.73. So when interest rates are going up and down, it's got everybody confused as to what to do. I talked to a lender yesterday and they had 7 contracts terminate just in the last week because buyers could not or did not want to purchase the home they were going to purchase because their interest rate was no longer going to be in the sixes, it was going to be in the 7s, and that payment difference was more than they could handle. And so we are seeing some terminations because of this fluctuation in interest rates. And I'm also seeing lenders offering different options to help safeguard some of these buyers. So I heard of one yesterday where they will say, okay, let's say our current rate is 6.73. If you lock in and close at 6.73, and let's say in a period of time, in the next 18 months, say they go back down to 5%, you can refinance with that lender without having any cash out of pocket. And so all of those terms can be discussed with our lender if that's something you're interested in. But I know there are a lot of buyers that are scared to go under contract because of just the volatility of what their payment would be. And so if that is you, please send me a direct message or schedule a Zoom call. There's a link up in the banner of my YouTube channel. Schedule a Zoom call with me, because I don't think it's a wise idea to just keep renting all the time instead of purchasing because you're afraid of rates. Let's talk about options. Let's talk about what the cost is to rent for you and what the cost is to buy, and see which situation works best for you. Okay, so we talked about jobs, we talked about interest rates. The next thing I want to talk about is cost of construction. And it continues to be high. I think we've gotten some control over it versus what it was like during COVID, but cost of construction is very high. So you're not seeing as much building as we were seeing 10, 15 years ago. And as a result of that, we don't have enough new houses being built to absorb the fact that all these people are moving to the area. And that is putting a squeeze on our inventory. The other thing that is happening with new construction, and it literally pains me to see what's going on right now, is large institutional investors are buying up a great deal of the Atlanta real estate. And not only are they buying up like a third of real estate, especially in these more affordable price brackets in the Atlanta housing market, Atlanta is actually leading the nation with investors buying up real estate. But they are also, as it pertains to new construction, we're seeing entire subdivisions being built, and being built not for single family homes for sale, but single family homes for rent. So what does that mean? It means that the homes that are being built, instead of being built for first-time home buyers or people moving up to a new home, the inventory is not there for that. It's all being taken into the rental market. And I could go on and on about this. In fact, I made a video about a year ago about the impact of these huge institutional investors buying rental homes. I will put a link down below. The AJC, a couple weeks ago in their Sunday paper, they did a huge article about the impact of what's happening with these institutional investors buying up so much of the Atlanta real estate, what that means for buyers and the housing market, but also the detrimental impact it has for tenants, for people who are trying to rent. They can't get in touch with their landlord. There's mold in their house, and it's just a nightmare. So I'll put a link to that article if that's something you're interested in. The number 4 thing that's really impacting the amount of homes available for sale right now is because we had these low mortgage rates for the last, let's go back, all this time. Even if you've been in the house for 20 years, when interest rates got down to 3%, a lot of people decided it was time to refinance. In fact, in the United States, a survey was done and they said about half of all of the US loans, mortgages out there, are at 3.5% or less. And so if you're sitting on a really low mortgage rate, you need, some sort of motivation to leave there. You're probably less likely to say, hey, I want to just sell my house and move just because I want, new carpet or whatever the motivation would be, because you're going to give up that 3.5% interest rate and you're going to be back up here at 6.73, which will make a huge difference on your payment. And because of that, some sellers are just saying, hey, we're just going to stay at home and we're not going to sell, which is putting even tighter constriction on our inventory. Okay, so those are some things: jobs, interest rates, cost of construction, inflation, and these low mortgage rates that everybody's wanting to hold on to. So let's see how that is impacting what's actually happening in the greater Atlanta housing market. So these are charts and data that are provided from our multiple listing service, through a company called InfoSparks. And what I've chosen to do is I've chosen to look at the entire greater Atlanta area. However, if you were interested in buying or selling, I would definitely want to look at exactly the area that you're moving in. So let's say we wanted to see 30152, which is an area in Kennesaw. You can definitely fine tune these data and this number to your specific area. And I want to tell you, I think it's really important that you do that, because I know that it's very important that if you are thinking about making a move, that you look at specific market data for the area you're moving in. Because when we talk generally about what's happening in the housing market, especially when we talk about what's happening in the United States, it's as if we were saying today it will be on average 50 degrees in the United States. Is that going to help you figure out what to wear to the office today? Because we live in Atlanta and it's totally different in Atlanta than it is in California or Minnesota. So you kind of get my point here. Looking at the housing market in the whole nation is good for perspective, but it's definitely not a good strategy when you're thinking about making an offer on a home or you're thinking about what you should price your home for. All right, so let's look at this data that we have. And I want to show you this first. This is homes for sale since 2010. I wanted to blow it out that far so you could see the ups and downs. In Atlanta, we have seasonality. We sell fewer homes in January, than we do in May, June. May and June is really when I think is the hottest part of sales. So let's think about that for a minute. It's low in January because in November and December, people are enjoying the holidays. They're taking vacations. They're not in the mood to move in those months, which means that 30 days after that, we're not going to have a whole lot of sales in January and February. But as the spring season heats up, people start going under contract in March and April and May. Those are our 3 busiest months for our team to write contracts all year long. And then those homes that are written under contract in March, April, and May are going to close in April, May, and June, which is why you see this peak here in June and July. And then July is usually kind of a little bit slower month because people take vacations, it's hot, they've already found the home they want to move to, they're getting ready to move. And then you can see as the year goes down, as the year progresses, the number of homes that are sold goes down. And this is pretty standard, okay? Let's move, I'm just gonna switch this so we can see better to the last 3 years because it has been nothing normal these last 3 years. And this is March of 2020. Here we are in, anything that was under contract in March, closed in April, and then everything, the bottom fell down, right? And all the way down to January, and we started to pick back up. But the number of homes for sale didn't really go back up until last year. In the middle of last year, June, July, August, and September was when we had, more homes being sold. But then what happened was in July, interest rates went up. We finished out those contracts and then it just kind of dropped. All right? So you have that to go on. Let's look at what the month's supply is. And the month's supply says if nothing else came on the market, how many months would it take for the existing inventory to be all sold? And you can see that we are at 1.8 months in Greater Atlanta. Anything less than 5 or 6 months is considered very advantageous for the seller. It means that our inventory is really low. Now, yeah, we're 80% higher than we were last year at this time, but that's because we were 0 last year at this time. We hardly had any inventory for sale. And it did grow over the last few months, but December it dropped, which is kind of normal, but we're really still very low. So despite the Fed's desire to increase interest rates and to make it so that the housing market slows down and gets better, it's not really flowing through here to Atlanta. So that's the one thing that I can tell you, that a lot of people predicted that the market was going to crash and prices were going to drop and then everybody was going to come back in the market. And I can tell you by looking at 1.8 months of inventory and what we're experiencing right now, I don't think that's going to happen, but more on that later. So the next thing I want to look at is how many people are actually looking for homes. What is the buyer demand? And the best way for us to look at that is to look at showings per listing. And this is tracked by a service called Showing Time that realtors use to schedule showings. And it's owned by Zillow, but they're providing this information here. And what we can see is that the number of showings per listing peaked in March of last year. And I can tell you that March, both the spring of last year and the spring of 2021 was absolutely crazy. I had one particular listing that we listed in March of 2021, and it had 98 showings in 2 days and 34 offers. That was absolutely crazy. That was the second most offers I've ever gotten on a property. And it was really hard, and it was incredibly frustrating for buyers because there was just, you know, so many multiple offers. You weren't able to put any contingencies on, and we even had tons of videos about how to win an offer. So everything kind of came to a standstill in about June and July of last year. And you can see showings per listing just plummeted. Buyers pulled out of the market. They didn't like the interest rate. They didn't like the prices. Affordability was at an all-time low. And it was just generally dead. And then as we went back to interest rates, you saw the interest rates dropped a little bit in December and January. And look what that did to buyer demand. We started to bring it back up. Our phones started ringing again. People started looking at our listings again. And we were also seeing multiple offers, and we are still seeing that. So now the question is, what's gonna happen with showings per listing over the next few months? Here's what I think is gonna happen. I do think that if interest rates don't increase at all, we're going to see more and more buyer demand. But with these job reports so positive, it's very likely that the Fed is going to increase interest rates again. And if they increase it too much, that could really tamp down our buyer demand. I do think that Atlanta has a little bit of insulation just because of our job growth and the health of this particular economy. And our houses are still, even though they're a lot more expensive, which we'll talk about in a little bit, they're still more affordable than a lot of the other big cities. So people are moving here because of that. And they especially love where we work, which is the Cobb County area, because you can get more for your money in Cobb than you can in some of the Fulton counties and like Milton and places like that. So if you're looking in the North Atlanta area, Cobb seems to be a little bit more affordable. So that's showings per listing. Next, talk about how many new listings are coming in the market. So since July, as expected, they were dropping. Sellers were holding on to their low interest rate, and they didn't want to sell because some sellers are saying, hey, if I have to sell, where am I going to move to? And they kind of, you know, they're getting stuck in that. So we did see an increase in January, a little dip in February, but I do think we're going to see our typical season where people are going to start putting more houses on the market. I personally have 3 coming on the market in the next few days, and I've got about 5 other listings that we're talking to. And when I talk to other agents in the market, they are saying like, yes, we do have listings coming on the market. I do not think that we have enough listings coming on the market to handle demand still, which means with months supply low, the new construction not happening at a pace fast enough, prices are going to probably not go back down. I like to look at price per square foot when I look at prices. You can see we were at the height in May and June. There were homes that were getting offers 10, 15, 20% more than the asking price. And that was just driving prices above what anybody expected them to be. And then when the market froze, not only were fewer houses coming on the market, but if you were a buyer and you were making an offer, you weren't competing with 10 other people. So you didn't have to go above the list price. And so prices did come down from what I felt was a little bit, well, I'm sure more than enough overinflated because of this period of time. They've kind of bottomed out here, and I feel like going in the next few months, that in some markets, particularly I would say like Paulding and some of the outlying counties, you're gonna still see downward pressure on prices. I have talked to some of my real estate friends that work that area. We have a couple listings out in Western Atlanta and they don't have as many showings, and we are having to get more competitive with price. However, the listings that we have here in West Cobb, Marietta, East Cobb, they are getting a lot of showings. Dan's showing one today that came on the market this morning. They have 7 showings already scheduled by 9 o'clock this morning, and they had a bunch more scheduled for the weekend. So that one's probably gonna have multiple offers. I have one coming on the market. It already has 2 offers, and we haven't even put it on the market yet. So when that happens, that puts upward pressure on prices. So be ready, guys. I don't think if you're looking to buy, closer into Atlanta, you're going to see those price drops that everybody predicted. And I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen to housing prices in Atlanta? Are we going to continue to see them go up, or are you thinking they're going down? We're in a recession. I would love to hear from you. Comment down below. Let's get some dialogue started. So in summary, the Atlanta housing market is still very volatile. We are not exactly sure where interest rates are going to go and the impact that it's going to have on buyer demand. But as it stands right now, demand is lower than it was at the height when interest rates were only 3% and anybody could buy a house. And things have changed. I mean, there's not as much demand, but inventory is not keeping up with demand, which is going to cause prices to continue to go up in most areas close to Atlanta, unless we see higher interest rates that drop that buyer demand. So comment down below and tell me what you think is going to happen, and if you found this helpful. Of course, every market is very unique. One subdivision can be totally different than the subdivision down the street. So make sure if you are wanting to make a move, we're here to help you. And we make it so easy. You can call me, you can email me, or up in my header, I've got my Zoom. You can schedule a Zoom call with me. And I hope you found this helpful. And before you leave, make sure you check out this playlist because I give lots of great tips for buying and selling homes in Georgia. Have a great day.